We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. That's not just a poetic thought, took Sigmund Freud's observation. He once wrote that love makes us vulnerable in ways we can barely comprehend. And if you've ever given everything to someone only to watch them grow cold, then you know exactly what he meant. She doesn't want peace, she wants tension. Long before modern psychology, long before dating coaches and relationship podcasts, Freud saw the truth hiding beneath polite smiles and soft embraces. Beneath every carefully crafted smile lies a hunger not for safety, but for struggle. It's not for comfort, but for gravity. And if you as a man don't recognize this, if you still believe that gifts, compliments, and endless reassurance will secure her devotion, then you are already losing. Because Freud shattered the illusion that still blinds most men today. Female desire is not pulled toward safety. It is pulled toward danger. Not danger that threatens her, but danger that refuses to need her. And that, Freud argued, isn't bitterness. It isn't cynicism. It's psychology written into our bones. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, devoted his life to studying the unconscious. He asked one haunting question over and over again. What does a woman want? After decades of listening to wives, lovers, daughters, and seductresses, Freud gave an answer that shook the foundation of his field. His conclusion, even she doesn't fully know. Her words can say one thing, but her instincts, her body, her unconscious cravings, they often say something else entirely. Freud saw desire as primitive, fluid, and uncontrollable. Female sexuality, he said, was like a dark continent vast, unexplored, unpredictable. Centuries of social norms, religion, and polite manners had tried to suppress it. But suppression doesn't erase desire. It only drives it deeper, where it grows more unpredictable and more powerful. And in that tension, Freud uncovered something unsettling. What women say they want and what they respond to often do not align. She says she wants kindness, but she obsesses over the man who disappears. She says she wants stability, but her pulse races for the man who lives on the edge. She says she wants a listener, but she can't stop thinking about the one who makes her feel unseen. Why? Because female desire isn't rooted in logic, it's rooted in lack. Desire, Freud argued, is not about having, it's about chasing. And the man who offers himself fully, who reveals every emotion instantly, who makes himself entirely predictable, that man becomes disposable. He is no longer a mystery, it's no longer a source of tension, it's no longer magnetic. Freud even gave this phenomenon a name, the repetition compulsion. Human beings, and women in particular, are often drawn not to what heals them, but to what reopens their deepest emotional wounds. It isn't malice, it's instinct. And so, women shaped by evolutionary pressures to test and select gravitate toward men who generate emotional conflict. They feel alive in uncertainty, pulled toward the electricity of not knowing whether they can fully grasp him. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. That's not just a poetic thought, took Sigmund Freud's observation. He once wrote that love makes us vulnerable in ways we can barely comprehend. And if you've ever given everything to someone only to watch them grow cold, then you know exactly what he meant. She doesn't want peace, she wants tension. Long before modern psychology, long before dating coaches and relationship podcasts, Freud saw the truth hiding beneath polite smiles and soft embraces. Beneath every carefully crafted smile lies a hunger not for safety, but for struggle. It's not for comfort, but for gravity. And if you as a man don't recognize this, if you still believe that gifts, compliments, and endless reassurance will secure her devotion, then you are already losing. Because Freud shattered the illusion that still blinds most men today. Female desire is not pulled toward safety. It is pulled toward danger. Not danger that threatens her, but danger that refuses to need her. And that, Freud argued, isn't bitterness. It isn't cynicism. It's psychology written into our bones. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, devoted his life to studying the unconscious. He asked one haunting question over and over again. What does a woman want? After decades of listening to wives, lovers, daughters, and seductresses, Freud gave an answer that shook the foundation of his field. His conclusion, even she doesn't fully know. Her words can say one thing, but her instincts, her body, her unconscious cravings, they often say something else entirely. Freud saw desire as primitive, fluid, and uncontrollable. Female sexuality, he said, was like a dark continent, vast, unexplored, unpredictable. Centuries of social norms, religion, and polite manners had tried to suppress it. But suppression doesn't erase desire. It only drives it deeper, where it grows more unpredictable and more powerful. And in that tension, Freud uncovered something unsettling. What women say they want and what they respond to often do not align. She says she wants kindness, but she obsesses over the man who disappears. She says she wants stability, but her pulse races for the man who lives on the edge. She says she wants a listener, but she can't stop thinking about the one who makes her feel unseen. Why? Because female desire isn't rooted in logic, it's rooted in lack. Desire, Freud argued, is not about having, it's about chasing. And the man who offers himself fully, who reveals every emotion instantly, who makes himself entirely predictable, that man becomes disposable. He is no longer a mystery, it's no longer a source of tension, it's no longer magnetic. Freud even gave this phenomenon a name, the repetition compulsion. Human beings, and women in particular, are often drawn not to what heals them, but to what reopens their deepest emotional wounds. It isn't malice, it's instinct. And so, women shaped by evolutionary pressures to test and select gravitate toward men who generate emotional conflict. They feel alive in uncertainty, pulled toward the electricity of not knowing whether they can fully grasp him. You thought showing her your wounds would make her stay. You thought proving your loyalty, your consistency, your emotional depth would unlock her devotion. But Freud would whisper in your ear, what stirs the female unconscious is not vulnerability, is mastery of yourself. Not control over her, control over you. The man who holds his hunger in check, who resists his urges, who doesn't beg for affection, he radiates a different energy. He is not desperate, he is not chasing, he is sovereign. Sovereignty, Freud believed, is the core of male power. Understand this. Women do not fall in love with your softness, they fall in love with your containment. The man who is tempted but doesn't fall, the man who feels anger but channels it into ambition, the man who is capable of love but does not worship it, that man unsettles her in the deepest, most primal way. To her unconscious, he is dangerous. And danger in Freud's sense doesn't mean violence. It doesn't mean chaos. It means power without dependence. But you were taught the opposite. You were told to lead with your need. To wear your heart on your sleeve and call it courage. To pour out every feeling and call it intimacy. And when you did this, you thought you were showing strength. But Freud would say, no, you were showing exposure. Exposure without mastery isn't strength. It's weakness. It makes you transparent, predictable, safe. And safe is the one thing desire cannot survive. When your soul is on display before it has been tested, when you beg to be chosen before you've chosen your mission, you are no longer a man in her eyes. You are a servant waiting for a queen, and she cannot desire a servant. She can use one. She can lean on one. She can depend on one. She cannot kneel to one. Desire, Freud said, lives in the tension between longing and withholding. It is a dance between hunger and resistance. And this is why women lose interest the very moment they feel they fully have you. Not because they are cruel, but because desire cannot live in certainty. You may think love is about honesty, about transparency, about giving her every piece of yourself. But Freud saw the flaw in this. Unconscious mind does not crave honesty. It craves polarity, power dynamics, archetypes, mystery. She doesn't want to see all of you. She wants to see the part of you she cannot reach. And modern men, with their therapy and their emotional availability, have become too reachable, too readable, too manageable. And in becoming safe, they've also become invisible. Because safety does not awaken passion. Safety does not spark longing. Safety does not call forth her instinct to surrender. That instinct, Freud argued, is ancient. It runs through myths, fantasies, and love stories across centuries. And in those stories, the man who captivates her is not the one who obeys, is the one who conquers himself. This is why Freud put such emphasis on the ego and the superego, the parts of the psyche that regulate and restrain. Because the man who lives only by his ID, his raw impulse, his lust, his hunger, is not a man at all. He is a slave to himself. And no woman will respect that. She might play with him, she might use him, but she will not desire him, because the man she surrenders to physically, emotionally, spiritually is the man who stands taller than his own desire. That's the paradox. You don't win her devotion by chasing her. You win it by becoming the man who doesn't chase anything except his own destiny. But the world has lied to you. You were handed a counterfeit map. A map that says women want men who are endlessly emotional, endlessly available, endlessly soft. A map that says listening is more important than leading. That equality in love means sameness, when in truth, what love craves is polarity. And now you live in confusion. You wonder why she loses interest, why she argues for no reason, why she tests your boundaries when everything seemed fine. It's because she's not looking for harmony, she's looking for gravity. She's looking for a man who cannot be bent. A man who lives by principle, not by emotion, who speaks not in apologies, but in direction. And when she meets such a man, even if he's not her type, even if he doesn't fit her fantasy, her body remembers something ancient, something her conscious mind forgot. This is the kind of man I can trust without controlling. This is the kind of man I can follow without fear. This is the kind of man who can handle me without needing me. That's the truth Freud left us with. You don't become this kind of man by watching more videos. You don't become him by memorizing lines, tricks, or tactics. You become him by rebuilding the structure of your soul. Freud called it sublimation, the art of channeling primitive impulses into higher pursuits. Anger into ambition. Lust into discipline. Heartbreak into purpose. That's how you stop being a man who reacts and become a man who creates. And women, whether they admit it or not, are drawn to creators. Not just men with routines, but men who have mastered their chaos and redirected it into something higher. This is the man whose presence speaks louder than his words. The man who doesn't need to prove anything because his entire life proves it already. And paradoxically, when you stop chasing her approval, when you stop begging for validation, something strange happens. The same women who dismissed you before begin to look again. The same silence that once offended them now magnetizes them. Why? Because they sense that you no longer need them to feel whole. And that, ironically, is the moment you become most desirable. Freud's most hated truth wasn't that women are broken. It was that they are tuned to a different frequency. A frequency that rewards sovereignty, not softness. That longs to surrender, but only to something worthy of surrendering to. That something is not your affection. It's not your endless reassurance. It's your gravity, your refusal to bend. Your capacity to stand unmoved in the storm. So stop bleeding for validation. Stop begging to be heard. Start standing in truth. Build your life so completely that whether she stays or leaves, your mission continues unshaken. She is not your prize. She is not your purpose. She is the reflection of your purpose. If you lead yourself, she will follow. If you orbit her, she will run. Not because she is shallow, but because biology doesn't negotiate with fantasy. What Freud dared to say, what still burns through relationships today is this: love is not enough. Not if it isn't grounded in power, not if it isn't built on polarity, not if it isn't charged with psychological strength. That is what creates real desire. That is what makes love last. And here's the choice every man faces. You can continue following the map that leaves you invisible, emasculated, confused, or you can return to what was buried in you long ago, your edge, your purpose, your silence. Because Freud believed the path to fulfillment wasn't pleasure. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't reassurance. It was mastery first of yourself, and then of the life you create. And mastery doesn't beg. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't apologize. It simply stands. So the solution is not to resent her for the tests, not to grow bitter at her games, but to rise above them. The solution is to stop playing, to stop orbiting around her moods, her approval, her attention, and to start orbiting around your own mission. Freud would remind you, she is not your destiny. She is not your completion. She is the mirror of your own leadership. If you lead yourself, she will follow. If you orbit her, she will flee. This is the paradox men struggle to face. If you were told to make her your priority, to place her above everything, to show her that she is the center of your world. But Freud's research suggests the opposite. The moment you put her at the center, you lose the gravity that drew her to you in the first place. Because she doesn't want to be your sun. She wants to feel your orbit. She wants to know that you are guided by something deeper, something immovable, something she cannot take away. Freud called this the reality principle, the ability to delay gratification, to resist impulse, to stay rooted in long-term purpose rather than momentary need. And this principle doesn't just govern your career or your habits, it governs attraction itself. A man who cannot delay his emotions, who reacts to every withdrawal, every silence, every cold shoulder, he's not a man in her eyes. He's a boy searching for a mother in the body of a lover. And here is the brutal truth. She cannot mother you and desire you at the same time. The moment she becomes your caretaker, your romance dies. You think she left because of what you did wrong? But Freud would argue she left because of what you stopped being. You stopped being a force. You became predictable, became a function in her life. Instead of a presence she could feel, and female desire does not survive in predictability, feeds on awe, on mystery, on the unknown. She may admire you for your stability, she may thank you for your loyalty. But admiration and gratitude are not desire. Desire is something else. Desire is the spark that makes her restless, the tension that makes her pulse quicken, the polarity that makes her want to surrender. And that spark dies the second you become fully known, fully owned, fully safe. That's why so many men today feel invisible. It's not that they aren't good men, it's that they have been tamed. They've traded their sovereignty for approval, and in doing so, they've killed the very attraction they hope to protect. But this truth isn't hopeless. In fact, it's liberating. Because it means you don't have to become someone else. You don't have to wear masks, or fake personalities, or cheap tricks. You simply have to return to what was always there. Your purpose, your discipline, your silence. Silence, not as weakness, but as presence. Purpose, not as ambition alone, but as direction. Edge, not as cruelty, but as unshakable center. Freud believed the path to self-realization wasn't indulgence. It wasn't pleasure. It was sublimation, transforming your rawest impulses into creation, into mastery, into something that outlasts you. Your anger can become drive. Your lust can become discipline. Your heartbreak can become legacy. That is the alchemy of manhood. That is the transformation she feels when she's around you, even if she cannot put it into words, because she doesn't just want a man with feelings. She wants a man who has forged his feelings into strength. She wants the creator, the builder, the man whose presence alone speaks louder than reassurance. And when you become that man, when you no longer need her validation to stand tall, something paradoxical happens. The very women who once ignored you begin to notice you. The silence that once offended them begins to pull them in, because now they can feel it, your sovereignty. Sovereignty cannot be faked. This is the truth Freud knew would make men uncomfortable. That women are not moved by the softness you were told to lead with. They are moved by your spine, by the part of you that cannot be bought, begged, or bent. Love, he argued, is not the foundation of male strength. It is the byproduct of it. Her admiration must be earned, not through begging, but through mastery, not through constant exposure, but through restraint. And if you surrender your center to make her feel emotionally safe, you have already lost the one thing she was drawn to in you, your edge. You were told to lead with your heart. But Freud would say, a man must first lead with his spine. Because the moment you trade your core strength for affection, you don't gain love, you gain quiet contempt. She may not say it out loud, she may not even consciously know it, but it will show in her eyes, in her tone, in her distance. Because she cannot desire a man who lacks gravity. This is why she tests you. Not because she is cruel, but because her unconscious mind is searching. Searching for the man who will not flinch. Who can say no without anger. Who can walk away without fear. Who can love her without losing himself. And if you cannot be that man, she cannot truly surrender to you. This is the call Freud left for men, not to harden, not to hate, but to remember. You were never built to be passive. You were never meant to be devoured by emotion in exchange for scraps of affection. You were not created to beg for loyalty. You were designed to forge yourself into something rare, something steady, something unshakable. A man whose mission continues whether she stays or leaves. Because when you embody that, when you walk with self-direction instead of desperation, the world bends differently around you. The same women who once overlooked you begin to feel drawn in, not because you said the right words, not because you mastered tactics, but because you no longer need them. And that, paradoxically, is the only moment they truly want you. Freud's final brutal truth wasn't that women are flawed. It was that they are tuned to a frequency older than words, a frequency that rewards men who stand firm in themselves, a frequency that craves surrender, but only to something worthy of surrendering to. And what is worthy? Not your compliments, not your begging, not your sacrifices. What is worthy is your sovereignty, your refusal to kneel, your power to remain unshaken. So stop chasing approval. Stop bleeding for attention. Stop handing away your center in hopes of being chosen. Instead, build your life so completely that her choice no longer defines you. Forge yourself until rejection doesn't move you, until approval doesn't tempt you, until her leaving cannot stop you. Because when you become that man, not arrogant, not bitter, but grounded, sovereign, untouchable, something shifts. And women, whether they admit it or not, will always feel it. That is the lesson Freud risked his reputation to reveal. Love without power is not love at all. Attraction without polarity is not desire. And a man without sovereignty is not truly a man in her eyes. So remember, you are not here to be chosen. You are here to become. When you become, truly become, then love follows, devotion follows, respect follows. It's not because you chased them, but because you no longer needed them. And that is the paradox Freud wanted every man to see. When you stop kneeling, the world finally begins to bow.